So we're very excited to be at Demand 2023 today talking about activating the data cloud for effective account-based marketing strategies. And really what we're going to be talking to today is a unique approach to how do you leverage the data cloud and generative AI for your account-based marketing. And I'm very excited to have Steve Armenti with me today to talk through this, who works at Google as a product marketing manager and global lead for Chrome Enterprise Marketing. I'm the CEO of Growth Loop and lead product at the organization. So we're going to talk through a little bit about the strategies of how do you start to leverage all the data you have in your B2B organization to actually affect sales. And at the end, we'll also be talking about how you can use generative AI in that approach. So Steve, just wanted to do a quick introduction and then we'll get on our way here.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Chris. As Chris mentioned, I oversee demand for Chrome and Android Enterprise at Google. And that essentially means all functions of demand marketing. So, your field marketing, campaigns, paid media, ABM, email, automation, data analytics, operations, et cetera. So, we're a full stack team that's tasked with generating demand for sales.
And when we started working together with Steve's team, what we'll go through a bit today is Steve's team was putting together a strategy for account-based marketing within Chrome for Enterprise. And I think the playbook extends to a lot of other enterprise organizations. And on our end for Growth Loop, we were actually a composable CDP built for marketers. And we'll walk through a little bit of why does that solution actually help you unlock the data and use it in your B2B funnel. So let's get to it. So I think first off to note before we get into the account-based marketing strategy is I want to give you a little introduction to Growth Loop. So like I mentioned, we're a composable CDP built for marketers, but the real question is what does that actually mean? And the idea is if you're starting to collect your B2B data, one, who are your prospects? What are their titles? Where are they in the opportunity funnel in Salesforce? And how are they interacting with your email nurture campaigns? Where are you putting all that data to analyze it? In a lot of cases, that's the data cloud. So it's either BigQuery or Snowflake, and you want to be able to leverage that data to actually optimize the funnel. So we actually work with Google today with over 1,000 marketers to optimize this funnel. And so that's why we're excited to talk through the strategy because it's tried and true and at scale at enterprise. So I guess to get into the strategy, I think to start here, Steve, I'll let you take the reins about the ABM vision you started out with within your team, but also applies to other enterprise companies as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I'm going to walk through really some principles to help folks establish an ABM function within their company. And so it starts with the vision, right? The why of why you're doing this and why do you think ABM is going to help you achieve your goals in marketing. And so what I like to think about is actually how are you empowering each function within marketing to be able to target audiences quickly as part of your broader omni-channel marketing strategy. And so I know there's a lot in there. And when you break that down, what you want to try to accomplish up front before you actually get into the tactics is, are you creating something that's going to allow marketers to thrive and actually go and target audiences the way they want to and be able to build those audiences the way they want to based on first party data, third party data, intent data, whatever you have access to, and allow them to go and do that work themselves, so you're not creating a bottleneck with some central team. And the second piece is across channel, right? And so as you're targeting these audiences, we all know that they don't exist in a silo or just one channel. And so you need to be really concise in how you reach those audiences across different channels and that they are going through the same journey. And then lastly, agility. I think with demand and particularly with ABM, there's a motion now to create these journeys quickly, flexibly, and do it in a customized way so that you can consistently learn about what's working, consistently learn about who's reacting to what, and then adjust your journeys based on that.
And I think what's unique about this, Steve, is basically a lot of the account-based marketing or B2B marketing organizations I work with are not thinking cross-channel. They're typically thinking, I'm going to run an email nurture program to my prospects in opportunity stage one.
Mm-hmm.
And then this other division handles paid media to acquire new leads, and they're not talking to each other. And what's interesting about the vision you set up is you said basically that's unacceptable. It has to be all the way through to
Yeah.
optimize the funnel.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And the reason I've said it that way is because I lived that, what you were saying. We had paid media teams out here trying to acquire leads, and they were optimizing for a certain KPI. And then you've got the field marketing team doing their thing, optimizing for another KPI. And then, maybe you have like an operations team in the middle somewhere, and they're like, what's the priority here? And they're seeing all of this happen, and it's in an inconsistent way, and it really is the key to making this work.
And I feel like the way to know that if your organization is siloed is, do you see the conversation happening where the nurture team or the events team is saying, "Hey, if the paid media team could just send me better leads, I could increase my SQL rate." And
Yeah,
then the paid media team saying, "Hey, what happens to all those great leads I'm sending you? Why don't you nurture them better?"
yeah,
And if that is happening, you kind of know you have the problem.
yeah, yeah. I've used the anecdote in prior teams that if you feel like you're in couples counseling at work, like something's going wrong. That if you need an arbitrator to talk about this stuff between campaigns and field, like you're going down the wrong path.
I
Um,
like that. B2B marketing is couples counseling. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we could all use a little bit of that extra therapy. So yeah, I mean, there's beyond that, there's a number of different barriers that you'll experience when you go to develop something like this. A few of the ones that I experienced were really a skill gap in marketing, or a scope gap, right? Where you might have a team of growth marketers, campaigns, field, et cetera, and their scope is to drive demand from those channels that they oversee, and they often lack access or the skills to data. And as you're going to talk about, Chris, like data is the bloodline of this working. And so, I think that's just important to recognize. You're going to experience a point where you are either not getting the data you want, or you may have that data, but you're unable to action it. And that's where you need to problem solve. And again, you have to figure that out somehow. Otherwise, the sophistication isn't going to work as you get further along in the process. And the second piece, going with the silos, a natural effect of having those team silos is a disjointed customer journey. And so you end up with all of these different campaigns, which were created in a silo and therefore have different messaging. They're speaking to the audience differently. They're using different content, different value props. And, if you get into the customer's shoes and imagine, your senior persona going from LinkedIn to maybe an advertisement, and then getting an email. If all that stuff is different, they're really not going to generate any affinity towards your brand. And so it's really important to align those things. And then lastly, timing. I always felt that timing was this sort of looming factor where you feel like you need to get all this done quickly, and you feel like your buyer's out there, and we need to like get this ABM program out there. We need to do it, at 100% right away. And I'm really against that. I'm of more an iterative approach, learning, using data to constantly mature that program, but doing so within a framework that you're confident in is going to last long term.
And I know we're going to get more into this in a second. And that on that second point, like we'll get into why data is the foundation first, but then that second point around how do you actually orchestrate the messaging across the channels? I think one of the big things that I've heard from you in the past, Steve, is the notion of a integrated campaign strategy or an integrated brief, and trying to make the siloed marketers actually get in a room, whether it's for couples therapy or
Yeah.
whatever's needed, and actually come up with a single brief that outlines the journey so they actually can even think in that way, because you're almost changing the paradigm of how they think about their marketing from single channel
Yeah.
to an actual customer perspective.
Yeah. No, it's right. I mean, if you're going to go through the motion of establishing an ABM strategy for your company, within your team, whatever it is, you need that to trickle down into the process, down into the mechanics of how work gets done. And yeah, for me, having a integrated brief was a big change in behavior and mindset for the team, because instead of allowing the campaign team to go and do their quarterly planning over here and then other teams over there, it was all in one place. And it was like, we're doing quarterly planning as a team, and then you start breaking out the different sections and almost forcing them to work together and try to find those connective points where it makes sense. And that's when the buyer journey starts to come to life.
Yeah, it's like the process is what helped them change perspective
Mhm.
to actually be able to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And so, kind of going back to one of the most important parts of this is data, right? And so there's a lot more that I know you'll get into, Chris, but when I'm thinking about data, I'm starting with these three principles. The first one being our target accounts. So I'm sure most folks are aware of target account lists. You probably have one, you probably maintain one, you probably worked with sales on it. And it's really important, right? I'm not saying get rid of it, but try to think about that list as the starting point for the rest of your ABM structure. And how are you going to segment those accounts? Are you going to tier those accounts? What signals are you going to use to tier those accounts? And then what are you going to do based on that? And so that's one thing I experienced was, we had a great account list and it was categorized and organized and it was great, but it didn't really inform anything. And so therefore that extra sophistication didn't really help. And then you get into the next stage is, okay, we know what accounts we want to target. Now, who at those accounts do we need to target? And then I think this is where it gets really interesting and you start to personalize things a bit, and understanding who the buying committee might be, what level of seniority do you need to target. You can start looking at different data sources you have access to try to enrich that data and just better understand who your ideal customer profile is. And you're going to build all of that into your persona strategy. And then lastly, the thing to look at would be segments. So these are almost like the people within the personas that you're going to activate your individual campaigns against. And so these could be related to maybe a solution or a special offer that you're promoting. And what you're doing is, again, using the data that you have available to create these sub segments that you can go and personalize with campaigns. Try to be more precise in how you're reaching out to the folks at those accounts. And this works like a taxonomy, right? So as you're building out more and more segments, it's all feeding up to the broader target account strategy. And so, I think one way to start to bring this to life is through an integrated campaign. You could call it omni-channel, cross-channel, whatever you want to call it. But really, this is the campaign structure, and this is something that needs to be always on. So you wouldn't necessarily create a structure that's for Q1 and then change that structure. You need something broad enough that's going to encompass your entire marketing plan that isn't focused on just the individual activities. Think of those individual activities as aligning and sort of laddering up to what this framework is. And so I like to think of it as, we have our target accounts and our personas, and then, that's who we need to reach. And then where do we need to reach them is the channels, right? So there's your display ads, your paid search, maybe your inbound, wherever you're actually going out and trying to reach these audiences. And then the tactics of how you're going to reach them in that channel. And between those two is really where the segments come in, because you're learning, hopefully, where these folks are most likely to engage, what sort of content they're most likely to engage with, what messages they're more likely to react to. And then you want to design those tactics around that information and make sure it lines up with, the capabilities of that channel that you're in.
Yeah, and the thing I love about this is it all dovetails from the data foundation of you have your target accounts and personas, and then you're saying, what journey do I want them to experience?
Mm-hmm.
And then you answer it's basically you're saying, answer the who, then the channel is the where, and then the tactic is how do I want to speak with them, which is kind of magical because then you're speaking to a human being in that persona and you're just deciding how do I want to have a conversation with them rather than how do I want to send a nurture campaign against this product feature. I'm just going to do it. And now I got to figure out who. That's actually doing it in the wrong order. Whereas this dovetails from the empathy of who am I actually talking to?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's the push versus pull analogy of messaging. And yeah, as B2B marketers, we're talking to humans, so we need to remember that. So yeah, here's basically an example of how this could come to life. So when you've got those components together that we've talked about, and you look at how you're going to go and speak with those folks across the funnel, I've laid out kind of a sample here, right? So in this example, we're using asset syndication, some Google ads, plus some LinkedIn ads, and then we're pushing towards tactics across web and email nurture, where we're acquiring some information at that stage. There's opportunities for these leads to engage with our marketing material, and then we're putting them into various email nurtures based on that behavior, based on their persona, based on all of the data inputs that we have. And then in this example, we're using a webinar as the kind of the tipping point, right? We want to get our leads and prospects to this webinar because at this webinar we're going to deliver something impactful, and based on the outcome of that webinar would inform what the sales qualification is. And so this could be an example of you could have a sort of a broader campaign that's activating something like this. You could also have this being kind of core to your ABM strategy if maybe your program's a little smaller, and you could look at like the syndication, the ads as individual campaigns. But you can see there's some structure here, and it's concise, and no matter how you slice it, what we're trying to do is drive folks towards that webinar so that they take a certain action, and then we have some sort of intent to qualify them and send them to sales.
And I think the beauty of this is now that you actually have structured the target accounts and segments and then have a journey for each, you can actually see what is the friction point for that set of target accounts. Like, where are they falling off in the funnel? Are we speaking to them in the right way? You have something you can optimize rather than you run an ABM program, you blast your list, and you're like, I don't know where, I can optimize, but I don't know who I'm optimizing for.
Yeah, exactly. And to that point, when we talk about segments, right? Within this flow, there could be multiple segments, and you're going to be learning how each of those segments is reacting to this, this sort of ideal journey that you've created. But no ideal journey is completely static. It ultimately has to change as you learn.
And so I think that the big question next is, how do you start to do this? If that's the framework of how you can do ABM on the data cloud, how do you actually activate the data? And so I know we've had a ton of conversations around this, Steve, of how do
Mhm.
you make this possible and actually a sustainable program within the team. And one of the things you spoke to at first was data foundation, and then make this self-service to the marketers so they can move quickly. And one of the key things I see B2B organizations struggle with is they have some data in Salesforce. They have a bunch of Excel sheets flying around, and they're like, well, I don't have a data team. How do I do this? And what's really interesting is it's becoming easier and easier to actually get your data into a data cloud like Google BigQuery. We've actually launched an easy button solution. So within an hour, you can be bringing your account list, your Marketo data, as well as Salesforce into that central source of truth, which is what your team has done, Steve, obviously, to set this up.
Mhm.
But then the second component, after you have your data lined up, is how do you make this self-service and the audience builder? And maybe here, Steve, you can talk to a little bit about why this was important for your team and why it's important for B2B to make this data accessible to even non-technical users.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've over the last year, as we've been working together, this has become a critical piece of our stack, but also like really critical to the process in which marketers operate. And, more and more as marketing leaders are pushing for precision and efficiency, and everybody's dealing with budget cuts and doing more with less, that ultimately in my experience has led to a conversation about like, okay, how do we get smarter? You get smarter with data. And if you're asking your team to go and get smarter and they don't have access to data, they don't know how to get the data, they maybe don't even have the skills to really take action on that data, you need a simple way and an exciting way to motivate them to want to do that, right? And so having a central tool like this has been key, and it's been something we can roll out differently to each team and get them excited for their use case, right? And so whether it's paid media, it's events, it's email, it's an ops or a sales team, you can kind of speak to them about some of the pain points they might have in their day to day, and position something like this as a bit of a savior to that, or at least something that's going to improve the way that they work on a day to day basis.
Yeah, and kind of the beauty is once you have a self-service audience builder, you can build out those target account segments that start the journeys, and then they can actually share them with the channel. So it reminds me, Steve, of the process of sharing the integrated briefs and getting the team into therapy to talk together and be able to plan. The other piece of this, though, is can they share data? So, can the paid media team use the same exact targeting account list that the events team or the email nurture team is using? And how easy is that? And reducing that friction actually makes the integrated brief possible in a practical way
Yeah, yeah,
as
and
well.
if you're, whether you're, say, someone in like a data or an ops team in marketing, and you want to pioneer a tool like this, or you're the leader on the team and you're bringing this to your team, you can speak their language so that it makes their life better, right? And to that point, it's like, hey, the event team, what if I told you I could increase your registrations on webinars by 20%? And the way we're doing that is by partnering with the paid media team to bring that webinar messaging into paid media, and we're building segments based on a previous behavior and activity on those leads, and who's more likely to attend a webinar or not. And then you're handing them something that allows them to do that, and it's like a win-win-win, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And the next friction point I've seen is like once you can actually set between the teams, you have your integrated brief, you have the target account set shared between the siloed teams, and they start to say, oh, well, okay, let's develop that journey of like the one you laid out, Steve, where it
Mhm.
was paid media to website to email nurture to events, right? How do you actually coordinate all of that? And that's where I think the growth loops journey capabilities can help account based marketers where we make that super easy to do. So if you're using Google Ads, DV360, and LinkedIn ads, you start targeting the accounts in those paid media channels. We then route those to Marketo or Salesforce Marketing Cloud so they can go through email nurture campaigns set up by your email team. And then it can go as an event invitation if they interact with one of those emails.
Mhm.
And then finally, we can actually route it to your CRM system as an opportunity if they actually go to the event. So orchestrating that data across that stack has been an important component to actually make the integrated brief possible.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And having done that manually prior, it is a massive shift when you're able to automate all of that.
And I think maybe we can. I know we're getting towards time here, but Steve, maybe you can speak to what you were looking for out of the system and what others should measure on the B2B system if they leverage the data cloud. What
Yeah.
results you're
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
for?
So if anything, you should have your business goals, your marketing goals, um, but also some KPIs to help you understand if ABM as a strategy is working for you. And here's a few basic ones you're probably already tracking, of like lead to MQL rate, volume of MQLs, the conversion rate to whatever qualified means for you and your team. But also, is ABM allowing you to increase sales cycles? So are you creating more deals more often? Are they closing faster? That velocity you want to look at. And what I've always done is try to position these metrics as a growth in efficiency. By doing ABM, by implementing an integrated approach, by implementing a tool like this to help you orchestrate all of that, are you improving the efficiency of those metrics? And then if so, you can apply all sorts of economics to that, right? If you're able to qualify more leads faster, you're getting more value out of your budget, and those sorts of things. So I don't think KPIs are kind of a fixed set of numbers that you're always tracking, but you should have some core numbers that are going to allow you to measure the efficiency of the program, and obviously speak to leadership team, and tell them how great your program is, and get yourself some more budget, some more resources, all that good stuff.
And I know we're over time, so we'll wrap it up here. But I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about generative AI. One of the benefits of going down this route of unlocking the data cloud and starting to think about journeys is you now have a fun playground that you can work in. And so it starts to unlock the abilities of your team, like sales folks or marketing folks within your team, to actually find target accounts with natural language, generate creative for nurture campaigns, all from that audience. And that's the type of capabilities we're working on next. And Steve, I know we've been talking a lot about how this could be used internally in the teams to make the integrated brief even easier.
Yeah, this is great. We'll be back for Demand 2024, and talk about Gen AI and ABM.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, thank you all for coming to Demand 2023. We appreciate your time and excited that we got to have you with us.
Thank you.